Today, we're diving into a show that, well, it really defined nostalgia for a whole generation. Happy Days.
Absolutely. It's amazing how a show from the 70s and 80s became so synonymous with the 1950s.
Right. And that's our focus today. We want to unpack how Happy Days really helped build that whole cultural wave of 50s nostalgia.
Looking at the context, the production, how it all came together to create that feeling.
Okay, so let's kick off with the man behind it, Garry Marshall. He had this interesting habit, didn't he? Like tweaking his shows after the first season.
He really did. It wasn't just Happy Days. If you think back to The Odd Couple.
Oh yeah, classic.
That show also changed its production style, how it was filmed after season 1. Marshall seemed to have this sense, this instinct for what resonated with the audience.
And wasn't afraid to make changes. So Happy Days. When you think of the show, two places probably pop into your head immediately.
The Cunningham house.
And Arnold's. Or, well, later Al's Drive-In.
Exactly. Those sets were just central. And the Cunningham house, it actually, it shifted.
How so? I remember it feeling very, homey, very sitcom-like.
It did, but the layout changed. Early on, seasons 1 and 2, it had a more sort of closed-off feel. The front door, the kitchen, they were kind of separate areas. But then around season 3, it opened up. Became much more of a connected space. Like you could see more rooms at once.
Oh, I remember that shift now. Why did they do that? Was it just an aesthetic thing?
Well, mostly it was practical. It was about the filming. They moved to using multiple cameras and filming in front of a live studio audience.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that open plan just worked way better for getting different camera angles, capturing the audience reactions, that whole live energy.
Right, that classic sitcom setup. Okay, so then there's Arnold's, the diner. Quintessential 50s, right?
Totally. Even the little details screamed 50s. Or, well, tried to scream 50s.
Oh, what do you mean?
Well, the look was great. You had the wood paneling, all those college pennants everywhere.
The orange booths. Can't forget the orange booths.
Never. And the restroom doors, labeled Guys and Dolls, very period specific. And the jukebox, of course. A 1953 Seaberg Model G, apparently.
Oh, specific?
But here's a fun fact. Some of the metal bits inside it, they were actually replacements made by a company that came along later, so not perfectly 1953.
Interesting. So fudging the details a bit for the overall feel.
Exactly. It was about the vibe, Which brings us to the pinball machine, the Nip It.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Always someone playing it.
Right. Except that machine was made in 1972.
Get out. Really?
Yeah.
A 70s machine in Arnold's 50s diner.
Yep. Little anachronism slipped right in there. It kind of shows how nostalgia works sometimes. It's more about the feeling than perfect accuracy.
That's fascinating. And it kind of leads into the bigger picture, doesn't it? Happy Days wasn't happening in isolation. It plugged right into this huge wave of 50s nostalgia.
Oh, absolutely. This whole period, roughly, let's say mid-70s to late 80s, some call it the regeneration. There was just this explosion of 50s stuff everywhere.
Like what else? I mean, Happy Days was huge, but what else was part of it?
Well, think movies like American Graffiti. That really set the stage.
Right, 1973.
And then Grease, massive hit. And music, too. Golden oldies, radio formats took off. It was like the culture was just looking back at the 50s constantly.
But it wasn't just one simple thing, was it? Like, everyone wasn't nostalgic for the same 50s.
That's a really key point. This nostalgia, it was complex. It wasn't just, simpler times or tied solely to Reagan politics, though that was part of the mix for some.
Okay.
Different people, different media. They were portraying the 50s in really different ways. There were debates, varied meanings attached to it.
So like American Graffiti, how did that fit in? It came out just before Happy Days really hit its stride.
American Graffiti is seen by some as maybe the first real nostalgia film. It sort of packaged that specific moment, 1962, actually.
Right, the Yearbook 62 thing.
Exactly. It links to this idea of history becoming like a product, something you can consume through media.
Packaging the past. And it presented a pretty idealized view, didn't it? That end of innocence vibe.
It did, yeah. But then later on, you get films like, say, Blue Velvet in the 80s.
Oh, completely different take.
Totally different, deliberately showing the darker side, the stuff hidden beneath the supposedly perfect suburban surface of the 50s. It complicates that rosy picture.
So the nostalgia wasn't always Happy Days, ironically.
Precisely. It shows the decade was interpreted in multiple ways.
Okay, let's talk about Richie Cunningham for a sec. Ron Howard. He was kind of our anchor in that Happy Days world.
He really was, the relatable center. And it's amazing to see his career trajectory. Even while doing Happy Days, he was already dipping his toes into directing.
And then the 80s just exploded for him as a director.
Big time. Splash, Cocoon, Parenthood. Huge popular films. Quite a leap from Richie Cunningham.
Yeah, incredible range. And he's still a major player, right? With Imagine Entertainment.
Co-chairman, yeah. They produced things like Friday Night Lights and Arrested Development.
Which he narrated. His voice is so iconic on that show.
It really is. And, personally, he married Cheryl Alley back in '75 during the Happy Days era. They have 4 kids, including Bryce Dallas Howard and Paige Howard, both actresses.
Wow, it all connects.
It really does. These shows, these cultural moments, they're made by real people with ongoing lives and careers.
So thinking about all this, the idealized sets, the broader nostalgia wave, the different ways the 50s were remembered.
It brings up a question, I think, for everyone listening.
Yeah.
Considering Happy Days' version of the 50s, and maybe comparing it to something like American Graffiti or even the critique in Blue Velvet, what parts of that 50s image presented in all these ways do you think really hit home for audiences back then in the 70s and 80s?
Ooh, good question. Like what specific elements of that nostalgia resonated the most? Was it the music, the perceived simplicity?
Yeah.
Something else?
Exactly. What was it about that look back that captured everyone's imagination?
We'd love to hear what you think. Definitely drop your thoughts in the comments.
It's always interesting to think about why we get nostalgic for certain times and what that nostalgia says about the present.
Okay, well that about wraps it up for today. Thanks so much for tuning in as we explored Happy Days and its pretty huge impact on 50s nostalgia.
Hope it gave you some interesting things to chew on about pop culture and memory.
Remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss our next exploration.
We'll catch you next time.
Catch you next time.